Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our TIDD board meeting of the City of Las Cruces. Today is Monday, April 24th. It's approximately 1 p.m. For those of you who are joining in, hoping to see the work session that will be following immediately after this TIDD board meeting. This is when the City Council acts as the Tax Increment Development District. So before we begin, I'm going to ask you to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Also, over the weekend, we had a gentleman defect from the county to the city. Commissioner Shannon Reynolds, thank you for joining us. No, actually, he's a member of our TIDD board, so he's ex officio. And since we normally have our pets of the week and jobs of the week on our work session item, I'm going to ask if it's concurrence of the council to go ahead and let's go ahead and do that right now and have our pets of the week and jobs of the week, because I see Amy Felix is on Zoom, so we might as well, if that's okay. Yeah. All right, so Amy, you're there?
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Okay. You want to just introduce yourself and then introduce our pets of the week, please?
Yep, definitely. My name is Amy DeFelix. I am one of the Adoption Rescue Coordinators for the Animal Services Center of the Mesilla Valley. And I'm here to present the pets of the week and also touch up on the monthly topic that I've been presenting on afterwards, which has been TNR. But let me go ahead and share my screen. There we go. Alrighty, so first up, we have our cat of the week. Her name is Scarlett. Her number is 59944, and she says, "I'm very sweet and love head pets. As soon as he approached me with a loving hand, I'm already purring and making biscuits. I get startled pretty easily by fast movements and loud noises, but I really just want a family that will let me feel safe and loved for the rest of my life." And you can see here she's being a little bit of a schmooze for the camera. She's definitely a model. And then we also have our dog of the week. His name is Miles. His number is 53028. And he says, "Before I landed at the ABCMV, I was a farm dog. I enjoy the outdoors and love spending as much time working and playing outside as possible. I might be a little bit shy with strangers, but just spend a little bit of quiet time with me and I'll show you just how much love I can offer once you gain my trust." And we will not be having an offsite adoption event this weekend, primarily because this Saturday, April 29th, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., we will be at the Vado del Cerro Community Center in Vado, New Mexico, for our little mini vaccine microchip clinic. In Vado, it is available only for Vado residents. So if you live in Vado, or if you have family members in Vado that have pets that need to be vaccinated, microchipped, definitely stop on by. The canine and feline core vaccines are free. Rabies vaccines, the Bordetella, like the kennel cough vaccines, and the microchips are only $10. So it's low cost. We're trying to make it easily accessible for the Vado community. So we encourage everyone that lives in Vado that has pets to stop on by. And then as a final touch up for the monthly kind of topic of TNR this month, I would just like to offer some local resources in case people have been interested in doing TNR in their community but not quite sure where to start. Broken Promises Southwest is a nonprofit that we at the ACMV also work with, partnered with, and they are a major TNR advocate. That's primarily what they do. They offer TNR education. They can help you TNR the animals, the cats in your community, as long as resources are available and their time as well. They also can host sort of educational group presentations as long as someone reaches out to them with interest and is able to provide the room and sort of presentation area. They do that at no cost, as long as people show up. They want to learn kind of how to TNR, how to trap, how to keep the traps safe for the cats so they don't like overheat or get too cold in more extreme weathers. So if you'd like to reach out, we have their email, brokenpromisessw@comcast.net. They're always willing to help out. They want to get TNR to be a more easily accessible service here in the community. And then we also have the City of Las Cruces Animal Control. They loan traps to anyone in the public as long as they come by and pick up the trap. They have trap pickups every Monday, and they can get loaned out for the whole week. So you have a whole week to try and trap whatever cat you're trying to get. You have to stop by the facility, which is at 550 Sonoma Ranch Boulevard, to pick up the trap. If you want any more information, you can call the Animal Control kind of dispatch at 575-528-4100. And then lastly, of course, we also offer some TNR services here at the Animal Services Center of the Messiah Valley. When space or during our surgery days allow, we can offer TNR surgeries for $40, and that includes like the surgery, the microchip, and the vaccinations. We also have held, I believe, 2 so far surgery days reserved just for public TNR, and we're hoping to schedule those more frequently as well. So if you're interested in that specific TNR surgery days, just follow our social media. We always put a little release out, like a press release of at least a few weeks before we actually do the surgery day. And if you're interested in that, you are more than welcome to email our spay neuter coordinator. Her name is Holly Wells, and it's hwells@lascruces.gov. And in the days that she is off, because she does also need days off, we have our general email just for general inquiries, ascmb@lascruces.gov. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Amy. So next, we're going to go to the jobs of the week, and Irene Pata from our Economic Development Department will give us those job updates. Thanks, Irene.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council. Irene Potter with Economic Development. And okay, we begin with the City of Las Cruces, who is hiring for a senior librarian. This position pays between $51,000 and $73,000 a year and is open until filled. White Sands Missile Range is hiring for a child and youth program assistant. This position pays $17.39 an hour and closes on December 28th. Families and Youth is hiring for a facility janitor. This position pays between $22,000 and $28,000 depending on experience and closes on May 10th. Doña Ana County is hiring for a jet port operations and maintenance worker. This position pays between $15 and $20 an hour depending on experience and closes on May 4th. Ben E. Keith Company is hiring for a shuttle driver. This position pays between $28,000 and $48,000 depending on experience and closes on July 11th. And Ernest Healthcare is hiring for a patient care technician. This position pays between $24,000 and $29,000 depending on experience and closes on July 12th. The New Mexico Workforce Connection Center is partnering with the New Mexico Children, Youth, and Families Department to host a mock interview event. This event will be hosted at the J. Paul Taylor Center on April 28th from 2:30 to 5. Any employers that are interested in participating can contact Faye Magsby by April 25th at faye.magsby@cyfd.nm.gov. And just as a reminder, the city is partnering with the New Mexico Workforce Connection Office to host a quarterly job fair. This event will be held on May 3rd at the Las Cruces Convention Center from 11 to 4. This is an industry-specific event focusing on trades, engineering, and healthcare. Employers have until April 30th to register. And for additional information, you can contact the local Workforce Connection Office at 575-524-6250 or visit them at their local office at 226 South Alameda or online at employnm.com. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Irene. Okay, so next we have approval of the minutes from the January 23rd, 2023 TIDD board meeting.
Move to approve, Graham.
Second, Abeda.
Okay, motion made by Council Member Graham, second by Council Member Abeta. Christine?
This is on the motion to approve the minutes from the January 23rd, 2023 TID board meeting. Board Member Abeta?
Yes.
Board Member Graham?
Yes.
Board Member Bencomo?
Yes.
Board Member Cran?
Yes.
Board Member Flores?
Yes.
Board Member Gondeta?
Yes.
Chair?
Yes. Okay, next item, 2.2, TID resolution number 23-001.
Move to approve, Graham.
Second, Corin.
Motion made by Board Member Graham, second by Board Member Chris Faber will be discussing. Chris?
Good afternoon, members of the TID Board. I'm Chris Faber with Economic Development. We're going to do this a little bit different today in that usually I give the project update and financials at the top, but because there's an action item here, we'll do that first and then we'll finish with the financials and current projects. So today we'll be going over proposed FY24 TID projects. I've worked with various departments who have assets in the TID and come up with a list of various projects that need maintenance in the downtown TID. So then we'll do the overviews and then current projects. Okay, so we'll jump right in. I broke these down into little categories to make it a little bit easier to digest. First up, we have downtown security. And so a couple topics of discussion have been cameras on Main Street. We are working with IT to install those potentially down the road, where IT is in the process of looking for potentially new vendors for that. So when that rolls out, Main Street cameras will be included in that. And then overnight security patrol. So this is money budgeted to have private security by way of vehicle patrolling the downtown area from, say, 10 o'clock at night to 6 o'clock in the morning. And their function would be to liaison with the PD if they notice that there's anything that needs to be reported or coordinated with. So. Next category is Main Street, Callecitas, and public art. So there's a variety of maintenance projects there, from repairing the sidewalk pavers that have become a little bit uneven over the years, upgrading the electrical capacity of the Callecitas so that we can have food trucks spread out a little bit further. So for example, in the farmers market, if you notice all the food trucks are kind of in one central area, that's because there isn't enough electrical capacity throughout Main Street to handle the food trucks. So this upgrade would allow them to spread out food trucks without having to use generators, which the farmers market doesn't typically allow. Continued work on the shade structures for the Callecitas, and then additional lighting for La Placita. As you know, parking lot 7 is a project we'll talk about, but going back in and retrofitting La Placita with some additional lighting. And then providing money for quality of life to do some public art maintenance and repairs. Facility maintenance, so new roofs for Monis, RGT, and Museum of Arts. Some exterior and interior painting at the Rio Grande Theater. Museum security upgrades, landscaping, and some remodeling of the Main Street entrance for Monis and the Museum of Art. As you know, DLCP received a grant from AARP several years back to add bike racks. We did the first round of those last year, but I believe they still have about 20 more bike racks, so we'll be budgeting some money to install additional bike racks within the TID. And then $1.6 million for parking renovations in the downtown area. Plaza maintenance, so stage repairs, stage shade, and plaza landscaping. Those are areas that kind of need some repair. The grass area kind of on the north side of the plaza, and the stage needs some repairs as well. The stage shade is not to be confused with plaza shade project. This would be to come up with some sort of a shade screen to help performers when they're up on the stage. We do get complaints from the sun coming in the west. Is sort of difficult in the summer. And then I did budget some money for Plaza Shade. The Amador Hotel, currently there is money in that account for the continued renovations of the hotel, but I'm proposing that we dedicate $1 million a year out of the TID until that project is completed. Campo Street. So out of the TID, we previously conducted the study and the redesign. Public Works is now ready to move into the construction phase. They've asked for $1 million out of this fiscal year, and then we would allocate the balance in FY25 to complete that project. All those projects there come to a total of about $7.5 million. Those are your options. I do want to point out that I did make a mistake on the resolution and put Brannigan Cultural Center roof instead of the Museum of Nature. So if you do approve this, we just need to amend that so that we can adjust that.
Chris, can you put that back on the screen, please?
Which slide, Mayor?
The one that you said if we approve this we need to make the amendment. Oh, yeah, right there.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Flores.
shouldn't we have a vote on the amendment before we move to approve this?
No, not necessarily. Well, we're still in the discussion. We can discuss everything right now. Does anyone have any comment? Councilor McCombs.
Sure, I'll take a comment. Thanks, Chris. Actually, I just have one question. I'm glad that, I know that since last time we talked about the potential for security, that might not have been an option. So I really just wanted to appreciate you and staff for continuing to look at that option and making it happen. I'm curious if you've thought about a timeline for like getting it started, and then what we think would it just go through the end of the funding cycle, or is there like 3 months, 4 months, that kind of timeline?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, Councilor Bencomo. So the timeline, this is proposed for the start of the fiscal year in July. In theory, we could use these funds through the life of the TID, which I believe is about 8 more years. So we would come back every year and just sort of reallocate additional funds for downtown security.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And then lastly, on the shade, on the plaza shade, I know that you allocated, that you put on there 500,000. Are we sort of just voting on the number for now, knowing that the consensus sort of was we definitely didn't want to spend a whole lot, even though there is no consensus yet on what the actual shade is going to look like?
Mr. Chair, Board Member Bencomo, yeah, I just kind of put that there. We'll talk a little bit more about what we're doing this summer, but I allocated those funds not for any specific reason, but there was discussion about independent of whether there's a shade structure built, there still needs to be some work done on those trees, which could ultimately provide a source of shade. So, but I just wanted to get that on the radar in case we come to a consensus during the next fiscal year.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. That's it for me, Mayor.
Anybody else? Okay, I got a question, Chris. So a while back, the council had approved naming the pavilion after Roberto Estrada. I was just curious when that was going to be coming forward.
Mr. Chair, I don't know the specific details of that, but I was talking with facilities on Friday, and I believe they are planning to do an unveiling in the next few weeks. And so they should have more details on that. But yeah, that is my understanding.
Vice Chair Gondara, you have a
Thank
question?
you, Mayor. Thank you, Chris. On the Campo reconstruct, we're going to allocate $1 million now. Is that? Yeah, thank you for that. What will be done in there for that specific $1 million? And is it because we feel like we're not ready to move into phase 2, phase 3 for the total $5 million? I mean, why wait?
Mr. Chair, Vice Chair Gondara, I think Public Works could speak more directly to that. This was just money that they had specifically allocated for. I don't know the phases of doing that street reconstruction, but that was kind of how they had wanted to approach it. I don't know if David or Tony
I think it would be
wanted.
helpful to have an idea in terms of what they're thinking, and so the public is chomping at the bit for that reconstruct.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Councilor Pro Tem Gondara. Kyle Arndt, for the record, Engineering Administrator for Public Works Department. Right now, the pre-planning and the conceptual design for Campo is complete. I went through a charrette where they all looked at a lot of different alternatives and they've selected one. We're going to be moving forward with this $1 million
Excuse me,
into
sir.
final
I'm sorry.
design.
The clerk isn't picking you up. Can you speak a little bit louder? And can you restate your
Or
name?
raise the,
Yeah.
yeah,
please.
closer to you.
A little bit too tall.
Thank you.
All right, how's that now?
I think that's a little bit better. I don't know if she got your name, if you want to.
Sure. Again, Kyle Arndt, for the record, Engineering Administrator of Public Works Department. We've gone through the preliminary planning, the conceptual design, and selected an alternative. We'll be moving forward with this $1 million into final design. Once we've completed the final design, which we expect will take about a year, we'll be asking for the remainder of the funds to move into construction.
Chris, thank you for that, Carl. I appreciate you very much. On the Amador Hotel, the million, do we have a plan about what, first, the use of the Amador, and second, what the necessary renovations will need to be done?
Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, again, Public Works could probably speak specific to where the project is because they're the ones overseeing it. I know there are funds there right now that they're working from. They just completed, the windows on the west side. I don't know what the next phase of that project is. Oh, and here comes Tony.
Ask and you shall receive. Hey, Tony.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Board Member Gandara. Right now, the historic structures report has been submitted to the state, was approved, so now we're in the process of submitting that for the national recognition. With that comes the phasing and our next steps for the process. So as we move forward, we have a separate project manager on board, Dr. Cooper, who's helping us proceed and phase this out. So we're making the right steps forward on this project.
So are you saying that we have to wait to get the national approval before we move forward? And then I guess I'm asking what those specific renovations will look like.
So
I think part of the issue here, at least, is, really, what is the total cost and what is it, for, and what is the plan for the Amador? I mean, I know what, I see Heather Ms. Pollard in the audience and whatnot, but I think the public and council, should be aware very specifically about what those next steps are going to look like, timeline, and what exactly is going to be done with the money.
Mr. Chair, Board Member Gandara, right now, the first steps is to complete the outside envelope of the building. We just did the west side of it, and now we're going to proceed with the east side. We've done the roof. We're working the roof right now. Once we get that entire envelope sealed, and then we can start to phase out the inside and kind of go from there. So the next big steps is to do the same thing to the east side that we did to the west side. So the exterior envelope. And then to answer your other question, we do not have to wait for that national recognition registry. That just kind of was a big milestone for us. But now with that being submitted, we can continue with the process of the phasing based on that recommendation.
And the phasing is entirely, the next steps, I guess, after the east side is completed, the phasing will happen inside the interior. And is there set things to be done? Like what sort of things are you looking at?
Mr. Chair, Board Member Gandara, like I said, the outside's first, then on the inside, it's going to look at the structural aspect of it, and then go from there. Again, we got to phase it out for that $1 million a year, so it's not going to be a full design. It's going to be the architect kind of designing certain aspects of it, so we can go out to bid and get those done. So it's going to be, I would say, probably about another 5-6 year phase. Based on
5 to 6 years.
Based on this funding, yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, thank you, thank you. I think then the shading, Chris. I've heard from the group that you convened about taking a lot of time to discuss the tree canopy and feeling like there is a standstill, and it feels like there's not consensus yet about what to do there. What needs to happen? Is it council giving you the direction, consensus with council? What is it that needs to happen in order to move around, in terms of getting that shade structure?
Mr. Chair, Board Member Gondada. So when we did have that group together and we discussed a variety of options, which I think I presented at the January meeting, the consensus of that group was trees would be the preferred option for shade. What we are trying to do this summer is we're going to do a pilot program where we put a large tent on a portion of the plaza, and I'll discuss that a little bit later, but that's more of a sort of a temporary project to try and just get some shade out there in the short term. In the long term, I don't know that there's been a consensus on if we are looking to do something beyond just putting up a tent every summer. And so probably have to get back with city manager's office and see how this project went with the tent to see if it was sufficient for the needs of the events. That was kind of the big issue, was not doing something on the plaza that would interrupt and interfere with what the events are doing and some of their concerns. We think we have a plan that will do that, but it's a short term, the tent goes up in June, comes down in mid-October type thing. Ultimately, I think the trees do need to be replanted. I think those could be a long-term source of shade. Whether that's enough shade, I don't know. But, I think just kind of getting back with city manager's office and talking about some potential long-term options is kind of the next steps. And I've had some of those discussions with some ideas, but nothing has really been flushed out beyond what I've already presented to the board.
Okay, and so will you be planting more mature trees in the next fall, I guess, or whenever the more appropriate time to plant trees?
Mr. Chair, Board Member Gonda, yeah, that's a conversation we'll need to have with with Parks, because a lot of things would have to be coordinated on, there's a lot of work that would need to be done to the plaza to allow for that to happen. So there's a real critical issue of timing there, so we're not disruptive of, summer rentals and holiday events. So if we get this approved moving forward, those will be the next, conversations we have as recommendations for either, the trees on the plaza and or a more long-term shade solution.
Sure. Chris, so this pilot that you're going to do with the putting up the tents in an area and then taking them down, what sort of evaluation will you have? Are you doing surveying with folks that rent it, or you're going to put out, if you come to the plaza and use the shades, how do you feel about it? I mean, how are you going to rate sort of
Sure.
the pilot?
Mr. Chair, Board Member Gonda, so there'll be a variety of things we take into consideration. The two big concerns from the event planner standpoint were line of sight to and from the stage, and the ability for individual vendors to set up tents on the plaza. So we actually looked at an option that almost covered the entire plaza with a tent, but because it's concrete and not grass, there was some issues related to how you secure it so that it's not an eyesore, and there was still a lot of line of sight issues there. So what we ultimately settled on was doing a tent that's about 40 by 60 that'll go in the area between the water feature and the sundial. This should allow no line of sight issues for majority of the plaza, and potentially even from within that tent, and it'll still allow events to set up little tents on the plaza for their events, and so it won't interfere with either of those. So the plan is to just, work with the event planners over the summer, see how that goes, see if that worked for them, address the shade needs, also working with PD and codes to see if having the shade there creates any extra burden for them or any unforeseen problems. That'll be a big concern there, and then we'll kind of reevaluate. Maybe it's a situation where just doing this tent every summer is the solution, and we can make that evaluation later this fall.
Okay. And then we used to have a large camera there, and it's moved around the city. Some of this money, will that be, I didn't see it I would like to advocate for more of a permanent one specific to that downtown area. I think we saw a real huge change in the mitigating the crime and different things that were happening there. Some of this money being used for that.
Mr. Chair, Board Member Gonda, I didn't budget specifically for one of those. I know those are, PD operates those cameras. What I would say is I feel like I budgeted high on a lot of these projects, and so if there's the potential to have extra money, we can address that at a future TID board meeting to say, here's what it will cost, here's some available money in the TID, and we can go ahead and do a resolution for something like that down the road.
Thank you, Chris. I would recommend to the board that this show up already in the budget. I think we've seen some good results, and it would just make sense in terms of the camera and the security guards and the overnight security is to have that in addition to, and that would be my recommendation moving forward. Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Chris.
Mr. Chair, Board Member Gondota, just one more point on that. So we are budgeting money to do the security cameras up and down Main Street. And I've been working with IT. I told them we'd like to see about 10 cameras. So I'm hoping that once the city has moved forward with the vendor for next fiscal year for the cameras, that'll sort of provide, a solution to some of what that other camera was helping out with as well. So
I've got Board Member Reynolds and then Board Member Flores.
Thank you, Mayor. Chris, about the security cameras, you're going to put 10 of them up and down Main Street, I assume, coming from like Amador all the way over to the city building. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Reynolds, I don't know the specific locations, only because a lot of it has to do with the current infrastructure for that on the plaza and downtown area. And so I've been working with IT to sort of figure out what the current infrastructure will allow. If it goes beyond, if the capacity or the need exceeds the capacity, then that'll be something that we would have to address. But I mean, ideally, we would like to have them from Bowman to the roundabout, yes.
Okay, specifically, what is the purpose of the cameras? What are you trying to accomplish? I think I missed probably this discussion last time, but what are you trying to accomplish with the cameras exactly?
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Reynolds, I think just added security. There's been a lot of concerns about vandalism over the last couple years downtown, and I think the cameras would just provide potentially a deterrent and then also a tool for PD if there is an incident of vandalism where they would potentially have it on camera, and that could help them assist with, apprehending whoever was, causing all the trouble.
So, Chris, so is all the vandalism happening only on Main Street, or is it also happening on Water and other streets?
Mr. Chair, Board Member Reynolds, it's not just on Main Street, but I know that there's the infrastructure required to operate the cameras is on Main Street currently. So again, we would have to expand that infrastructure beyond Main Street in order to have cameras go beyond Main Street proper at this time.
Chris, the reason I asked this question is because if we're going to make an investment in security, I think, as Councilor Gondura has pointed out with the Amador Hotel, it would be important that we identify what we're trying to accomplish and actually put in a kind of a phased approach to accomplish everything, so that we don't say, okay, we've got this, it's convenient, this we can do, but it doesn't really address the complete problem. And so I think that for myself personally, I'd like to see a plan that says, here's the whole problem, here's the first phase of what we can do, and here's what we ultimately need to accomplish downtown to actually solve the problem. That's the way I would like to see it. I don't know about the rest of the board. So even though we're going to spend maybe $100,000 for, or 100,000, wasn't there 250? 100,000 for the cameras, 250 for the 100,000 for the cameras. I'd like to see a plan that actually says, how are we going to really address the issue with the cameras downtown? What else do we need to do? Do we need to put them on the buildings and ask the owners to allow us to put them on the rear of the buildings? Do we need to put in more infrastructure? What exactly do we need to accomplish at the city to actually address the issue? That's what I'd like to see.
Sure.
Okay. A second question. For the Amador Hotel, you mentioned that the $1 million, I think the other gentleman did, the $1 million was actually for the east side, but I think he hinted that it was only going to be for the planning. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Reynolds, I don't know specifically that that's entirely for the east side or for planning. What we're doing is we've got about $2 million there right now. So this was just an effort to provide a continuous funding stream so that as Public Works goes through the various stages of planning and then construction, that there will be money available for those projects. But Tony could speak specifically to what that next round of funds will be used for, but I don't think it's earmarked specifically for just planning.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, Tony, please.
Mr. Chair and Board Member, when I mentioned the east side, that's our next phase of construction. These $1 million that are going to come every year that's proposed is just going to be based on the next phase of the project. So when I mentioned the east side, that would be the next part to enclose the envelope of the entire building.
Okay. Do we have do we have an idea of exactly how much this is totally going to cost us and an anticipated timeline? Did I miss that?
Mr. Chair, Board Member, no, we have not stated that in this meeting, but based on what was said earlier was about 5 to 6 years to finish the project. We hope sooner, but that is just based on $1 million a year.
Okay. So 5 to 6 years, we're talking about, you believe that $6 million additional dollars will actually complete the project, both structurally, inside, outside, parking lot, everything?
I am hoping a lot less, but on the conservative route, based on the past couple of years that we've been going, that is what I say. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Board Member Flores?
So a lot of these allocations are still tentative and subject to the allocations for specific projects are not dollar specific at this point, right?
Mr. Chair, Board Member Flores. Yes and no. So I've worked with a variety of the departments to get rough estimates for some of these projects. Some of these are standalone projects. For example, the sidewalk paver repair, that would just be coming in and just, taking care of that as a standalone project, whereas Campo Street and the Amador Hotel are funding for an ongoing project. But some are, again, standalone and some are not.
And specific to the Amador Hotel, the allocation of that money is, what is the source of that money?
Mr. Chair.
Is it just TIDD revenue?
Board Member Flores, yes, this is all just TID revenues, yes, for that project.
And how much, I think there was $5 million that would be allocated until it's all done.
Mr. Chair, Board Member Flores, yeah, I mean, that's the idea, is to dedicate $1 million a year till the completion of the project. Public Works is estimating, 5 to 6 years for completion. So yeah, potentially another $6 million, yes.
Oh, $6 million. I figured 5 years, $1 million was 5. But do you think that that's going to be sufficient? It just seems like it's been an expensive project, and I was just wondering if there's other sources of funding to assure that it is restored.
Mr. Chair, Board Member Flores, there's potentially other sources, certainly. Having it on the National Registry does make it eligible for new grant funding. And so there's always a variety of private grants, things of that nature that could be contributed. I should clarify what I said before. We're only talking about allocating TID funds now, but previously there was state funds as part of this project. So there have been CIP funds dedicated to this project in the past. But this is just the allocation of TID revenues. But certainly there are other avenues to find grant funding for a project like this.
At this point, Chris, do you have any idea what the total restoration cost would be? Or any ballpark figure from our anthropologist? Do we have an archaeologist or something in the city? Where is she? I think maybe she's an architect, but focuses on restoration. She's not here.
Mr. Chair, Board Member Flores, no, our architect, Shadevi, is not here today. However, I can go back for the past couple of years and see what has been expended and what our future expenses are and get that information to you all.
It'd be great to have that information in terms of looking at CIP money and how we go about getting that, just in case the allocation we have now runs out. If you could do that, Tony and Chris, that would be wonderful for us.
I would like to mention we've also had quite a bit of capital outlay money that the foundation has went out for and received, so that has been a big contributor to the success we've had so far.
So do you know how much that is at this point?
Off the top of my head, no, ma'am, but I can get that for you.
Okay, thank you so much, Tony, and thank you, Chris. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair.
Tony, before you leave, can I just ask you a quick question? Can you talk about the foundation? Have you or any of the other engineers in the city looked at the foundation? Has it been solidified? Is it good?
Mr. Chair, not the Amador Foundation, but the foundation of the building, because Ms. Pollard's over there.
I'm sorry.
I didn't want to say anything bad about her.
I'm sorry, Amador Hotel Foundation.
Yeah, okay. Yes, we've looked at the foundation. I believe about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we went and we did some of the columns. We exposed the columns that were inside the building and noticed that a lot of those are just floating. They were just being carried by the ceiling, and they were just floating. So we had to go in there and redo the interior foundation for a lot of those columns.
But in your opinion, it's good now, the foundation? Okay, great, thanks. Okay, any other questions or comments from council? Okay, so I just have a couple. I just want to address, it's really primarily to address Board Member Reynolds and then Board Member Flores, or really anyone in the public. So Board Member Reynolds, I have to apologize. I know that you are ex officio member of our TID board, and I probably should forward you the different various emails that I received that very many city council members receive as far as all the activity that's going on down there. And there's a lot of frustrated business owners. Some have actually moved because of the vandalism that's taking place and all the other crime, okay? And so it was determined through some interpretation that we can utilize TID money to pay for the security. And I wanted to bring this out because I know there's going to be other businesses around the city saying, hey, well, how come you can't do that for ours? Well, it's because this is a special funding that's been utilized, and it's just in that area. Okay, so I wanted to put that up. And then the camera concept really came about when Veterans Park was getting vandalized a lot, and when we put cameras up there, it literally stopped. And so you've asked some great questions, but I think the mere fact that there are cameras out there, and then when you go into Veterans Park, it says, you know, the cameras are on you. And I guess that has some kind of effect for people who don't want to be, you know, seen or photographed. So those two things, those two combinations, and then the fact that they'll work with LCPD as far as what they can see. So I just wanted to kind of point that out, but I'll try to remember to forward you the emails so you can see that and have a. Now getting back to the Amador Hotel. So I think and I don't know, did you know that this used to be the county manager's complex? Okay, so way back then. And then, of course, when they built the government center, I think in mid-2003, 4, or 5, in that ballpark, the county wanted to give it away. They couldn't give it away. They wanted to give it away to the Chamber of Commerce, and they said, no way, we're not touching that. And we really didn't, the city didn't want it either, but it is a piece of history. And so, of course, we took it over. I'll admit, I wasn't the biggest supporter of it, but I will tell you this much, and that was what I wanted to verify from Tony, is that if there's one area, and then of course it's downtown, so we see it all the time, they're constantly doing work on there. And I've been in there several times, and it's actually coming along quite well. And so it's kind of, this building I think was built in mid-1800s. So think of a remodel, a job. You know, you never know what you're coming across. You think it's one thing, and they open up and go, wow, there's a new room in here. What this, you know, so then they have to come back. So it's a project. And so I just wanted to, and I'm glad that Chris mentioned it, because there were some grants. There is a foundation. They did get state legislative monies. And so I think once it's finished, it'll really help the Amador patio and grill, because then they'll really feed off of one another. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm good with it. I think it's coming along well, and we don't want to turn back now. So those were my only comments I had. Okay. Are there any members of the public who wish to say something, have any comment on this first item? Heather Pollard. Let's see, you were the 2022 Person of the Year, weren't you? Or was it 2021?
I don't.
You won so many awards you can't remember.
Well, thank you. Mayor and Council, It's been
I'm going to need you to state your name, please.
Heather Pollard. I'm president of the Amador Hotel Foundation, and I've been working for the last 20-something years on the downtown and the Rio Grande Theater and various projects in the community. I have to tell you that the Amador Hotel has been the most challenging. We built La Casa, we built Hospice, we saved the Rio Grande Theater, we got the plaza, we opened Main Street. This has been the most challenging, and it has been 16 years. I think it's been 14 for me. When it's finished in 5 years, I'm not going to tell you how old I'm going to be, but you can guess. I want to thank each one of you. You've all been through the hotel. I know sometimes it's dismaying. It's a huge challenge, but it is the history of downtown. The Amador family were the first family. They were devout Catholics. They were Hispanic. They were political. They were educated. They've really put Las Cruces on the map, and not only just for the Amador Hotel, but the fact that this will be a meeting place, a place where we can have weddings and quinceañeras and just about anything you'd want. I think it's just going to be a jewel in the crown for downtown. And I appreciate each and every one of you. I've worked with many of you. Some of you are new. I've worked with City Council for 38 years. And this is the most challenging. I just want to thank you on behalf of the Amador Foundation for your support and your belief. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Okay, so if there's nothing further, Christine?
Mayor, we need to amend the resolution.
Oh, that's right. Just making sure you were paying attention. So, is there an amendment?
Mayor, I move to amend the resolution to read the new roof for the Museum of Nature and Science.
To remove the new roof for Brannigan Cultural Center, replace it with Museum of Nature and Science?
Sure,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
That's my
Second.
amendment.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Pengomo, second by Board Member Flores. Christine, on the amendment?
This is on the motion to amend Resolution 23-001 to remove the new roof from the Brannigan Cultural Center and replace it with the Museum of Nature and Science. Board Member Abeyta.
Yes.
Board Member Graham.
Yes.
Board Member Bencomo.
Yes.
Board Member Curran.
Yes.
Board Member Flores.
Yes.
Board Member Gondeta.
Yes.
And Chair.
Yes. Okay, now we're on the main motion, so no further questions?
I have one more
sure, go
question
ahead.
for Chris. So, thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris, is there any allocation or anything in the making for Brannigan Cultural Center, which is also pretty dilapidated?
Mr. Chair, Board Member Flores, yes, and I'll be discussing that at a slide further on in this presentation.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, if there's nothing further, Christine?
This is on the motion to approve Resolution 23-001 as amended. Board Member Abeyta.
Yes.
Board Member Graham.
Yes.
Board Member Bencomo.
Yes.
Board Member Curran.
Yes.
Board Member Flores.
Yes.
Board Member Gondeta.
Yes.
And Chair.
Yes. Okay, now we're going to go to discussion items. First one is 3.1, the financial update, and Chris Faber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so we'll run through the financials real quick. This is the year-to-date. You can see the monthly collections. The TID has been doing extremely well, which is why we have the money to fund a lot of these projects and move forward with funding here in the future. You can see year-to-date, we're at almost $5 million, and this is through March. So I anticipate that we'll exceed $5 million easily through the end of this fiscal year, if not approach $6 million. So here's the three different funds within the TID. 2815 has a balance of about 8.3 million, 4270, 2.6, and 4271, just a little over $700,000, bringing the total to $11.7 million. So the TID is doing very well with funds. That's my financial update.
Board Member Abeyta.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you. Curious on the increase in February. That was quite drastic.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Board Member Abeyta, I did notice that one, and also November as well. We've seen revenues on a monthly basis really go up starting in about 2020, and I think a lot of that has to do with some of the changes in the gross receipts collections and here in the state of New Mexico. But specifically why it was so high in February, I don't have any more information. I wish I did. It's a little difficult to track down a lot of details specific to the TID from the state. These are just sort of the numbers that are reported back to us. But yes, that was quite a windfall for a short month.
And I was just curious if, any of the programming that we do in the downtown, events or things like that, if that could ever be tracked to help increase during those months if we're drawing in more people, different individuals. So I'm just curious if we're trying to match any of those types of items.
Mr. Chair, Board Member Abeyta, yeah, the state does sort of provide kind of a industry breakdown, and if any of the board has not seen that, I can certainly make that available. It's sort of an ongoing analysis that they do. It's sort of, it works well at a higher industry level, and as you sort of get down, the numbers get a little fuzzy, but it sort of does kind of tell you generally where things are, and so I can certainly make that available to you guys so for your reference, and we could certainly discuss that at a future TID meeting as well.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Chair and board members, I just want to make a note. If this follows the contour of the gross receipts tax, when there's a 2-month lag, and so it's probably December, which is Christmas, and that's just an assumption, but it'll make more sense that it's December that it's counting.
So my theory was it was Valentine's during that time, and so, but okay, yours makes better sense there, Ipo. Okay, any other questions?
Okay, and lastly, current and future TID projects. So as we discussed before, we will be putting a 40 by 60 tent on the plaza. It'll go up on June 1st. It'll come down October 15th. It'll be available to anyone using the plaza, anyone renting the plaza. So any events taking place during that time will have access to that tent. It'll be between the splash pad and the sundial, and again, addressing the major concerns that event planners had with line of sight and the space to put smaller vendor tents. So we feel like this accomplishes all of those. We did, I can tell you, we did have some robust discussion regarding options. We did look at a huge tent that would cover almost the entire plaza. The problem is when you're trying to hold something that size down on a concrete surface, you're bringing in really, really huge blocks to weight it down, and at some point it just sort of becomes more of a problem than a solution. So we feel like this is a good sort of test pilot for this program. It could be an ongoing solution moving forward if it works really well, but I should be able to report back at the October TID board meeting as to how well that was received. I promise you one of these days I'll come back and tell you that parking lot 7 is complete, but they are still working on it. There's been a lot of issues with the utilities underground, which has really slowed things down. So Public Works has been working to really get this squared away with our utilities department. I think things are on track, and so we should be seeing resolution to this sometime in this spring. So future TID projects. So as you can see, current TID balance is about $11, almost $12 million. We're budgeting about $7.5 million for projects, and TID revenues are coming in pretty steadily. So questions about how to spend that money moving forward are things that we will need to talk about over the next couple years. To Board Member Flores' question about the Brannigan Library and Cultural Center, I have met with Quality of Life. There is a plan for a lot of renovations to be done there, and certainly the TID funds are available for that. So those are things that we'll be looking at over the next fiscal year, moving into the FY25 for some of those projects. Additionally, I did meet with Public Works regarding any of the streets that fall within the TID. A lot of those were sort of on their plan for work, but the funding wasn't there. So this does provide a funding source for Alameda, Loman, Amador, and Campo south of Amador, all within the boundaries of the TID. So these are just a couple of things to put on the radar moving forward. As these kind of develop with these departments, I will certainly come back to you later in the fiscal year with plans on how the future TID revenues could be used. And perhaps at a later TID meeting, we can actually just have a discussion about ideas for future TID projects. But just wanted to put those out there that we are working with other departments that have needs within the TID, and these funds are certainly available. And that's my presentation.
Thank you, Chris. Mayor Pro Tem, did you want to ask Chris that question?
Sure, why not? Thanks, Chris. You know, the Las Esperanzas group has approached us about the road diet specific to the Amador and Loman area, and you know, reducing a lane there. Could that be something that we look at doing for the future projects that you listed?
Mr. Chair, Board Member Gondara, providing funding for something like that, certainly, as long as it's within the boundaries. Beyond that, that would be a public works project to get into. But if that's a decision that the board decides to make, or the council, or however that would shake out, certainly those funds could be allocated for that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
That's a good idea, Vice Chair Ganana. Perhaps if it was to represent a fifth of the project, maybe a fifth of could be used for that. So, okay. Anything else before we close? Does anyone have any questions in the audience on any item that we discussed? Okay. All right. Thank you for that. I appreciate that, Chris. If there's nothing further, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Second.
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
Abeta.
Board Member Abeta, second by Board Member Bencomo, that we adjourn. Christine?
This is on the motion to adjourn the TID board meeting. Board Member Abeta?
Yes.
Board Member Graham?
Yes.
Board Member Bencomo?
Yes.
Board Member Cran?
Yes.
Board Member Flores?
Yes.
Board Member Gondara?
Yes.
Chair?
Yes. Okay, we are adjourned as the TID Board, the Tax Increment Development District. Give us a couple minutes for those of you watching or here in the audience, and we'll switch over to the City Council, and we begin our work session.